yourself, then show your kids.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I need you to get the hell up out of here.
This is Glennice Jackson, a 31-year-old mother of 3 from Mississippi, whose life would be brutally taken in a way that no one could have predicted. On the morning of January 27, 2025, Glennice was preparing for her shift at the Nissan plant, unaware that the day ahead would become a nightmare she could never escape. Her husband, Joshua Andrews, consumed by rage and armed with a weapon, ambushed her in the parking lot. What started as a routine morning quickly spiraled into terror when he forcibly kidnapped her and sped away toward Interstate 55, with Glennice trapped in his vehicle. But Glennice refused to go down without a fight. Her desperate attempts to break free only fueled Joshua's fury. In a moment of uncontrollable anger, he pushed her from the speeding truck. But what happened next was even more horrifying. As Glennice fell onto the highway, an oncoming vehicle struck her, crushing her under its wheels. Her final moments were agonizing as the violence of the world around her culminated in an unbearable tragedy. But this wasn't just the end of Glennice's life. It marked the beginning of a chilling unraveling of events that would leave those who knew her searching for answers, desperate for justice. What led Joshua to such an unthinkable act, and what consequences would follow from the nightmare he had created? But before we reveal the disturbing truth, let's go back to where it all began. This story takes us to Canton, Mississippi, a welcoming and progressive community that embraces its colorful past while celebrating its distinctive Southern charm. Canton is known as a peaceful, family-friendly town. But beneath the surface of this quiet town is where the life of Glennice, a devoted mother and expectant parent, would be violently cut short, reminding the community that even in places defined by peace and tradition, heartbreak can arrive without warning. Born in Canton, Mississippi, Glennice Antoinette Jackson was just 31 years old when her life was tragically cut short. A dedicated worker at the Nissan plant, Glennice was also a loving mother to her children, known for her warm personality, and she had a way of making any room she entered lively. She was incredibly responsible, working tirelessly to provide for her children and ensuring they always had what they needed. Sadly, she won't be alive to enjoy the reward of the sacrifices she made. Despite the pressures of work and motherhood, Glennice made sure to enjoy life. Her friends often described her as the life of the party, someone who could always make others smile and knew how to have fun. However, her life took a dark turn after reconnecting with 29-year-old Joshua DeMarshall Andrews, her estranged boyfriend, whose troubled past would ultimately lead to tragic consequences. While Glennice was hopeful that their relationship could work, there were glaring red flags about Joshua's past that she could not ignore. Joshua had a noticeable upside-down tattoo on his forehead, a visible sign of his troubled history. He had previously been sentenced for shooting into a motor vehicle and aggravated assault, spending time in prison. But regardless of the violent nature of the crime, Joshua would be released. On September 7, 2022, he would be released from prison. The signs of trouble were there for Glennice to see, but her compassionate nature led her to give him a chance. Joshua claimed that his time in prison had allowed him to reflect and become a better person. He assured Glennice that he was now a transformed individual, ready to change for the better. Additionally, Joshua was openly bisexual, something Glennice seemed comfortable with, as he posted on social media to clear the air about his sexuality. However, the cracks in their relationship began to take a dark turn. Years into the relationship, Glennice decided she had had enough. She left him, citing domestic violence and a multitude of other troubling behaviors.
she began trying to distance herself from him. Though she had made the difficult decision to move on, she would soon realize that escaping Joshua's grip would be harder than she had hoped. Little did she know this would only fuel Joshua's rage. The beast within him, once dormant, was awakened, setting in motion a series of events that no one could have predicted.
On the morning of January 27, 2025, at approximately 7:30 a.m., Glennice was getting ready for her shift at the Nissan plant, unaware that the events of the day would soon take a tragic and violent turn. Joshua Andrews ambushed her in the parking lot of the plant. Armed with a gun and consumed by rage, he kidnapped Glennice, who was pregnant at the time, forcing her into his car. With no regard for her safety, he sped away, heading toward Interstate 55. As they drove near the Durant exit in Holmes County, but Glennice, desperate to escape, made a brave attempt to flee. She either jumped or was pushed from the moving vehicle, but the consequences were devastating. As she fell onto the highway, Glennice was struck by an oncoming vehicle traveling at high speed, and she was killed instantly. The collision was fatal, leaving investigators with the heartbreaking task of piecing together the tragic sequence of events. Upon further investigation, authorities discovered that Glennice had been shot multiple times before she attempted to escape. Bullet holes were found in the side of Joshua's car, and it remained unclear whether she had been shot before being forced out or if she was shot while trying to flee. The uncertainty of her final moments only deepened the tragedy. Joshua's actions had already sealed her fate before her desperate attempt to break free. As the investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death unfolded, it became evident that Joshua's violent history had led to yet another senseless tragedy. Meanwhile, across town, another piece of the puzzle was falling into place. The Madison County Sheriff's Department had received a report of a kidnapping early that morning. They were soon alerted to a body found on the roadside, and upon arrival, they confirmed that the victim was Glennice Jackson. Local law enforcement quickly worked to piece together the circumstances of her death. Despite a previous history of domestic violence and being a convicted felon, Joshua had been released from prison early, and this act of violence would be the tragic consequence of that decision. The search for Andrews led to his arrest 2 days later, but the damage was already done. Following Glennice Jackson's tragic death, the investigation into her kidnapping and murder rapidly intensified. As the authorities pieced together the events of that morning, disturbing details began to emerge. Joshua Andrews, the man responsible for her death, had a violent criminal history that should have kept him behind bars. Police soon learned that Andrews had a history of domestic violence, which included shooting into a motor vehicle and aggravated assault. Despite this, he was allowed to roam free, eventually making his way back into Glennice's life. As a convicted felon, Andrews was also illegally in possession of a firearm, which only added to the dangers Glennice faced. The authorities quickly learned that Andrews had abducted Glennice from her workplace parking lot and driven her north on Interstate 55. Surveillance footage of the incident combined with witness testimony painted a clear picture of what had occurred, but there were questions that needed answers. Did Glennice try to escape on her own, or did Andrews push her out of the car after shooting her? Adding to the complexity of the case, authorities had to determine whether Glennice's tragic death was purely an accident caused by the impact with the vehicle, or if she died from the gunshot wounds. The investigation into the exact sequence of events was far from clear, but one thing was certain: Glennice had tried to escape. As investigators continued their search for answers, they began to uncover chilling details about Andrews' behavior, including his obsessive attempts to contact Glennice and his troubling social media posts. He had been stalking her for some time, and his actions were clear warning signs of an escalating situation that authorities had failed to address sooner. After an intense 48-hour manhunt, Joshua Andrews was apprehended by Carroll County deputies. His arrest marked a small victory for Glennice's family, who had been anxiously waiting for justice. Once in custody, Andrews was charged with multiple offenses, including capital murder stemming from Glennice's death.
An abduction in Madison County has left one woman dead and a man behind bars.
12 News' Tia McKenzie has more on what we know so far. Tia, this just sounds tragic.
Indeed, Melanie, several law enforcement agencies were on the scene in Holmes County trying to piece together what happened. Now, 29-year-old Joshua D. Marshall Andrews was charged with capital murder after being taken into custody this morning. Mississippi Highway Patrol blocked off the left lane of the Interstate 55 as deputies worked the area. Madison County Sheriff's Office received a call around 7:30 a.m. regarding an abduction at the Nissan in Canton. The victim was reportedly driven to Holmes County after the abduction. She died after allegedly jumping out of the moving vehicle before being struck by oncoming traffic. Now, this investigation is ongoing.
The fact that Andrews was a convicted felon and had used a firearm illegally further compounded his charges. Local authorities were quick to point out how dangerous Andrews had become, with Sheriff Willie March emphasizing how disturbing it was that someone with such a violent history was allowed to remain free. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the system had failed to protect Glennice, and her death raised critical questions about the early release of violent offenders.
New details tonight after a woman was killed early this morning after allegedly being kidnapped at the Canton Nissan plant by her ex-boyfriend. 29-year-old Joshua Andrews is now behind bars and he's charged with capital murder. 3 on Your Side's Chris Fields joins us now with the newest information as family members release the victim's name. Chris.
Well, that's right, Maggie. Family members identifying the victim tonight as Glennice Jackson. And as of now, there are still more questions than answers in this case. We have now learned the mother of 3 precious boys was killed in the most gruesome way imaginable. And what's even worse, law enforcement tells us the accused killer has previously served time in jail for violent crimes.
Well, it's really a sad situation for Lula's life in a situation like that. And also the young man that did that, we also have arrested him some years ago and sent him to prison for aggravated assault.
Holmes County Sheriff Willie March shocked to learn about the tragic loss committed by who he says a dangerous man.
He had that kind of temper to commit such a crime, but I really hate it happened to this young lady here.
According to Madison County Sheriff's Department, after allegedly kidnapping his ex-girlfriend, Andrew allegedly then forced her into a vehicle and fled onto Interstate 55. Police say when they made it to Holmes County, the woman jumped out of the vehicle and another car hit and killed her. Andrews later surrendered at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff March says the 29-year-old was no stranger to the law.
I know he did some years. Now, how many he did, I had to go back and look and see. But he did serve some time for aggravated assault here in Holmes County.
Now, March is sending his prayers and condolences to the family in their hour of grief.
I never bring sadness to the family to lose someone this young in the family, because you're someone who took a life from a person that something you can't give back. I mean, this lady's gone forever, and they would have to live with that. And so I'm pretty sure it's a hurting family.
Now, at this time, it's still unclear the motive behind the kidnapping. Now, Andrews is currently being held at the Madison County Sheriff's Department without bond.
Also new at noon, the woman reportedly kidnapped at a Canton Nissan plant was pregnant at the time of her death. Glennice Jackson's ex-boyfriend forced her into a vehicle and drove north on Interstate 55. And while in Holmes County, Jackson jumped out of the vehicle on Interstate 55. Another vehicle struck and killed her. She had been shot also multiple times. Now, the revelation coming with a new charge given to Joshua Andrews, first-degree murder for the death of an unborn child. He has also been charged with capital murder and felon in possession of a firearm. Andrews is currently being held without bond.
While the arrest of Joshua Andrews brought a brief sense of relief to Glennice's grieving family, it could not erase the devastating pain they now faced. Glennice's children are now without a mother and were left to navigate a world that felt less safe and infinitely more broken. Her family, including her sister, friends, and coworkers, were left in shock, trying to process the loss of a woman whose warmth, laughter, and love had once filled their lives. The community of Canton, Mississippi was equally affected by the tragedy. Known for its southern charm and family-friendly atmosphere, Canton was shaken to its core by the brutal act of violence that took place on its streets. Residents were in disbelief, grappling with the fact that a woman they knew and admired, someone who had cared for her children and worked hard at the Nissan plant, was taken from them so suddenly. Glennice was described as a mother who loved her kids deeply and a friend who always made time for those she cared about. As news of her death spread, the community responded with an outpouring of grief, but also with a call for action. Many in the community were deeply disturbed by the fact that someone with Andrews's violent criminal history had been allowed to re-enter society and harm Glennice. The sense of injustice was palpable, and many asked the same question: how was this allowed to happen? The support for Glennice's family was overwhelming, with friends and loved ones coming together to help in any way they could. The tragedy had sparked a broader conversation about domestic violence and the need for stronger protections for victims. In the weeks following Glennice's death, local organizations began holding discussions on how to better support those in abusive relationships and how to prevent further violence. The community, though deeply hurt, rallied to ensure that Glennice's death would not be forgotten and that her story would lead to change. On a somber day, friends, family, and the community gathered to mourn the loss of Glennice Jackson. Her funeral was a testament to the love and support she had built throughout her life. People who knew her well remembered the kindness and warmth she had shared with them. She was celebrated as a mother, a friend, and a beloved member of the community. The ceremony was filled with tears, but also with beautiful memories of Glennice's life and the joy she brought to those around her. The service was also a reminder of the ongoing fight against domestic violence, with many speakers using the occasion to advocate for stronger protections and resources for those in abusive relationships. Glennice's family spoke of how hard she fought to escape her abuser and how, despite her efforts, she was still taken from them. Glennice's children, too young to fully understand the enormity of the loss they had suffered, were at the center of the mourning. They were left without their mother, the woman who had worked tirelessly to provide for them and protect them from harm. Their lives, now irreparably changed, would never be the same without her.
Well, the True Believers in Christ Church of Jackson hosted a program that welcomes families who recently lost loved ones. Although the families were small in number, the magnitude of love exceeded beyond measure. Members of True Believers honored those in attendance with plaques of recognition, courtesy of Jackson City Councilman Kenneth Stokes, now the mother of the late Glennice Jackson, the woman who authorities say was kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend from the Nissan plant in Canton, spoke on behalf of her daughter's legacy.
To love is so much better, and I see that because that's what she did. She loved somebody who didn't love God. And in doing that cost her something, but it helped us to see some things. It helped us to know that it's right to love.
You want to share? You don't? Okay, well, know that we love.
The family members who received plaques say they are grateful to the True Believers in Christ Church and Councilor Stokes for their recognition.
Domestic violence, as tragic as it is a preventable crime. We must do more than just offer condolences after the fact. Communities, law enforcement, and policymakers need to step up and make sure that those at risk of violence are protected. Glennice Jackson's death should be a wake-up call for all of us. The responsibility does not solely lie with the victim, but with the entire community to offer the help, the resources, and the intervention needed before it's too late. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.